Yes, let's move on to something a little bit more amusing, I would say. It's something regarding the trans issue, as we have discussed it many times before. Obviously, there is a big discussion going on in Britain and across most of the Western world right now regarding kids transitioning for some reason.
Trans kids.
Trans kids, yes. People who have definitely got the mental faculties to truly understand the consequences of their actions at 12 years old. But there has been some relatively good news, I suppose, regarding this. You can see here we've got this Times article talking about trans pupils are being turned down by girls' schools as a threat to their status. So just to go into the detail on here...
You're not a girl.
Yes, shockingly enough, is you have a penis, therefore not girl. But a leading group of girls' schools is to close its doors on boys who identify as girls to protect their status as single-sex institutions. And once again, it must be pointed out there, the distinguishing factor of sex, not gender, not any alphabet soup ideology regarding the differences between sex and gender, whatever differences you may want to point out there. This is about sex, which is unchangeable. You can shift your gender identity, whatever, but these are girls' schools for girls. So, no, you're not allowed in here if you're a boy. Girls' Day School Trust, which represents 25...
Sorry, I reminded that Ben Shapiro meme. You know, he's like, well, how do you know it's an all-girls school with the word girl on it?
Yeah, there you go. Sorry, here's the girl sign. There you are. Do I need to explain any further?
How do you know your gifts are from Santa when it says from Santa on it? Sorry, yeah. I love that meme.
That is a great one. Girls' Day School Trust, which represents 25 schools across England, has updated its gender identity policy. Previously, most girls' schools had been unclear in their admissions policies about whether they would accept transgender pupils. Probably because before this wasn't much of an issue worth talking about. This probably didn't come up anywhere near as much as it does nowadays. While many have pupils at the school who have changed their gender identity, asking to be treated as male or non-binary, they have avoided explicitly stating whether they would admit biological boys who identify as girls, which once again is pointing out there that there seems to be a recognisable difference that we can see between...
It's the Clavin thing all over again.
I know. But even then, even within what you would call trans people, there's a difference between trans boys and trans girls that we can all recognise as well. I know, it seems simple. I feel like I'm talking down to people here.
The state of Western political discourse is, maybe we can tell the difference between boy and girl. Well, how could you do that? I have no idea.
Consult the ancient texts. Brings out biology textbook.
Yeah.
Yes, GDST, which includes Wimbledon High School, Royal High School Bath, Oxford High School and Newcastle High School for Girls, says in its new policy, GDST is committed to single-sex education for girls. Admissions to GDST schools are based on the prospective students' legal sex as recorded on their birth certificate, so not just what you declare yourself as being. It says of applicants who are legally female but who identify as trans or non-binary, applications will be carefully considered on a case-by-case basis. Single-sex schools present a particular context for transgender students. There may be cultural challenges involved in a trans student who does not identify as a girl attending a school which deliberately tailors its ethos and educational approach to cater specifically for girls. And once again, this is especially important when you are a kid and unless, of course, you're being prescribed blockers.
Hormone blockers.
Yes, hormone blockers and other such stuff, which I find to be incredibly questionable, and we'll get into those sorts in a little bit. Obviously, before you transition, before you have any hormones or anything like that, you are still going to be biologically a boy, and therefore it might cause issues when communicating and being educated alongside girls. The Trust says of children who are legally male but identify as trans or non-binary, GDST schools are able to operate a single-sex admissions policy without breaching the Equality Act 2010 on the basis of an exemption relating to biological sex. GDST believes that an admissions policy based on gender identity rather than the legal sex recorded on a student's birth certificate would jeopardise the status of GDS schools as single-sex schools under the Act. For this reason, GDST schools do not accept applications from students who are legally male. We will, however, continue to monitor the legal interpretation of this exemption. So, altogether under the law, it sounds pretty reasonable. Once again, you are a boy, this is a girls' school. No. It's simple as.
I know it's complex for maybe some leftists out there, but
this is a very difficult subject to wrap your head around. But yes, of course, just because you say you're a girl does not entitle you to anything. You are not to be handed out entitlements just because you identify with some kind of marginalised class. Cheryl Giovanni, the GDST school chief executive, said that the schools were trying to offer a supportive environment to pupils exploring their gender identity. Our trans students are welcome in our schools, and our policy primarily sets out ways in which schools can support them, she said. So even though they're not admitting trans girls, they are still kind of playing into the elements of the ideology. But obviously, if it's girls saying that they're boys, it is less dangerous, potentially, to the safety of the other girls around them. So even though I disagree with it, it makes more sense to treat it that way. But overall, it seems like a relatively straightforward thing to do. There has been some controversy stirred up by all of this, and from who else but prime conservative thinker Tom Harwood, who's decided to have a spiral somewhat on Twitter. Not that he's been someone that I have been particularly respectful of his viewpoints. A few days ago we covered how he was stating that Sir Tony probably deserves the knighthood. Very conservative perspective there, Tom. But he's come out, he posted this article on Twitter and put, "A blanket ban is insane. Young trans girls are indistinguishable from their non-trans friends."
Then how are they trans girls?
Yes.
If they're indistinguishable, how do you know that they're a trans girl, Tom?
Yes, and indistinguishable to you maybe, but for those of us with eyes, not so much. Feels like this country is uniquely in the world sliding backwards on trans rights. So just to really put the point, sliding backwards on trans rights, nobody has the right or entitlement to be in a girls-only school if they are not biologically female. You could probably make an argument that you are stepping over women's rights by trying to do that, as has been the case.
Well, this is the definition of what is a trans right.
Yeah, exactly. The whole aspect of it never really made much sense to me, because it's like, well, if you're an individual and you're above the age of 18, you can do whatever you want, but when you're a child, you're not really in any position to be making those kinds of decisions.
Well, no, because we have human rights, and then we have sexual rights such as women's rights or men's rights.
Yep.
The fact that you can't go into someone else's bathroom because of the threat of
but
violence.
if I say I'm a woman,
yeah, but
I can feel free to flop it out in front of little girls.
Yeah, the trans right seems to be to say that you shouldn't be, if you're trans, you shouldn't have to abide by women or men's rights.
Yes.
That's the argument.
We just have the blanket right to completely flip any perspective.
But that's the thing. I have X right is just I have the right not to respect these rights.
Yes.
Doesn't make any sense.
All right.
It's as sensical as the argument trans women are women. And circular logic.
And also, once again, this is coming from Tom Harwood, supposed conservative with his incredibly conservative viewpoints. Let's move on, because he just, you see that and you think, okay, that's kind of dumb, Tom. But he just kept doubling down whenever anybody called him out about it, and then decided to go on long Twitter threads explaining his viewpoints. And he says this: "Funny how these stories always focus on trans girls and never trans boys. That's not the own that you think it is, Tom. It may be noted that..."
Again, what, trans girls and trans boys? What are they? They're indistinguishable from boys and girls. Oh, wait, no, not, are they?
Oh, no, they're not. And you might want to check out one of our premium podcasts on Loudon, is it?
Loudon County?
Loudon County, for more exposition on the differences that can be expected. But yes, trans girls are obviously known to be more of a threat to a certain extent, if you want to put it that way, than trans boys.
Well, men are more of a sexual threat than women are.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that simple.
There you go. And if you move along again, we can just follow this thread. We can just keep pulling at this thread to see how far it goes, because it is quite entertaining to see him try and wrap his head around basic biology, to be perfectly honest. Here he says, number one, trans women aren't males. I mean, they, biologically speaking, they still are.
Then what are they, Tom?
Yeah, what are they, Tom? And two, presenting trans women, an incredibly vulnerable and tiny category of people, as a threat to other women is straight out of the pretending gay men are a threat to men playbook of the 1980s. It's as inaccurate as it is offensive.
No, you idiot. No, this is the argument that men are more likely to be rapists than women. The feminist argument. They kind of got turned into the man-hating all men are rapists discussion. Yes. No, the reality is that men are more likely to be rapists than women. Therefore, we take that into account when making public policy. And
you also need
Tom's like, the hell with that. I want more rape in society.
Yeah, and you also need to take into account that there is a certain proportion of these people who are going to find any loophole they can to get around barriers to what they want.
We have the examples.
Yes, and that will include just saying, well, I'm a woman now. Let me in. Let me into your changing rooms. I'm a woman now. No. And then we can just carry on. He found some YouGov polls that say, you see here, 40% of people say transgender woman is a woman, and 41% of people say transgender man is a man.
I don't care.
Okay, that's a YouGov poll. One, they're self-selecting, and we all know the problems with YouGov polls.
But even let's just take it at face value. Let's say completely true. Doesn't matter, Tom. Because what's in people's heads isn't what is important about this discussion. The reality, physical reality, is what is important.
And I believe this also seems to be in reference to the idea of gender rather than sex, and even then it's all mixing up the terms and confusing the whole thing. Once again, this whole discussion just seems to confuse people more than anything, if you're trying to base it on, as you say, reality. And then if we move along, he found another graph. This one's saying that, you see though, women support it more than men do.
I don't care.
Okay. People don't always know what they're talking about, especially if you're asking pollsters.
Let's ask female inmates. How's that one going to be?
Yes. And then if we move along again, we can see his reaction to some of the responses.
It's such a Tory response to things as well. I hate it.
It really is.
What about public opinion? What about physical reality? The truth? The thing that's meant to matter. No.
Yep. Yeah, John points out he's going for a truth by democracy. More people agree with me, therefore I'm right. More people agree that the big sun in the sky is our God. Okay, whatever.
Okay, then we'll go to certain countries and ask their views on racism. And when we go to a certain country and they're like, yeah, racism good. Tom Harwood's there, well, racism good, I suppose.
Well, I've got the power of the people behind me.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, would much rather our national conversation focused on the cost of living, housing, taxes, crime, health, family, and individual emancipation than on how nasty... May I just say, from a man who was very supportive of lockdowns for a long time, individual emancipation, that's a joke coming from you. Surely, Tom, surely. Then on how nasty and exclusionary some people can try to be towards a very tiny and oppressed minority of people. And as you can see there, we've got a comment from our own John saying, you only disagree with me because you are nasty. That's basically the argument that's going on here. Nasty and exclusionary. This is full-on leftist argumentation right here,
Unlike
Tom.
me, I stand with the rapists of female prisons. I'm not a nasty person.
Wow. Yes, and as well as going on this sort of tangent, which seems to be taking notes from the Hassan and Vorsh style textbook on how to have an argument with people online, he also really doubled down on this on GB News as well, because of course he is one of the presenters of GB News, and we've got this clip of him arguing with Posey Parker, noted TERF. If you want to play this, John.
I can only assume that you don't have any trans friends, that you've never met anyone who is trans.
Well, I might assume you don't know any women.
If you were to walk past someone in the street who was trans, how on earth would you be able to tell? You would, of course,
Do you honestly
refer to them
think that
in their
most women
chosen
don't recognise
pronouns.
men? Do you honestly think the human race has got this far without recognising biological sex? We do it in a matter of seconds.
What do you mean by biological sex? I don't check you for your chromosomes. I look at you and see you as a woman.
You fully well
if I were
know
to
that I'm
see
a
someone
female
walking
just
down
by
the
looking
street
at
who
me and
had
talking to me.
secondary
How
sex
ridiculous.
characteristics of a female, I would say they were female.
I just alluded. I'm so with Posey just bursting out laughing. It's like, you can't even take a person like that seriously.
I know. And also, just go back. You can see here, he posted this on his own timeline.
190,000 views there from people being like, "Oh, Tom, you're an idiot."
Tom, you've just posted this absolute self-own.
Are there men posting their L's online account yet? Someone needs
There
to post
should
that.
be. Well, it'll just be clogged up with Tom Harwood. But also, I feel bad for Mercy, who's just had to sit next to so much cringe since she
You can
started.
also see her
at
again,
GB.
like the knee.
Yeah, like the knee. She's just sat there like, oh god, I expected better from this. But yeah, also once again, you can see that he's taking everything in the absolute worst faith interpretation of what they're saying. Yes, I can't tell if you're a woman unless I check your biological chromosomes. Blood sample, please.
You can't hold those opinions unless you've met no trans people. You've never met a woman, Tom.
There you go.
How about is Tom gay or not? Do you know? Because I'd love to ask him about his dating preferences and how does he know?
I don't want to go by any stereotypes or anything here, but he has to be.
Oh, well, I'm sure he'll let us know. But how does he decide who he's going to date?
Yeah. I mean, as she said, do you think the human race would have got this long if we got this far if we didn't recognise it? It's kind of evolutionarily programmed into us that I can just look at you from a glance and go, boy, has penis, not good for mating.
A very monkey age brain there.
Exactly. Sorry to break the hearts of some commentators out there, of some viewers. But yeah, we move along. He also did a debate, it seems, with Calvin Robinson, who's got some good perspectives on this. And I just want to show the clip of Calvin summing up Tom's problem at the end of this here. If you want to play this.
Exactly, and we're talking, and I think the point here, I think the point here, hang on.
If we take away, what we're doing here is we're raising women. We're saying that women don't exist. You choose to be a woman or not. And what we do...
Blah, blah. All we're talking about, the number of trans children in this country is so very small. 12 million children, maybe 2,000 of them trans. And that is the point. Edge case is very small. We shouldn't be doing broad brushstrokes.
30 seconds left. Calvin, you've got the final word.
I just think we shouldn't confuse the two. Trans women should be able to live their lives as ever they see fit. Trans men, the same. Identify however you like, but that does not make you male or female. You cannot change your sex. You can argue about gender all day, every day, but sex is your biology. You are born with the XY or XX chromosome. You are born either producing sperm or eggs, in most cases, and you cannot change your sex.
In most cases.
Some people have problems, absolutely, and we shouldn't laugh about it. I understand you've been charitable and trying to support people, but you're conflating ideology with truth, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, and there you go.
You kept that fairly civilised. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good point there from Calvin, that you are just going purely by ideologically...
Z-Jock in the corner. Pure ideology.
Yeah, pure ideology rather than basing it in any empirical fact or truth. But there was the mention there of intersex, just a little reference to it. And of course, Tom Harwood went full leftist in going, don't you understand that intersex people exist? Therefore, there's no such thing as true biological sex, you see. Look at this graph. Scroll down a bit.
What a Jesus Christ.
I know. This proves my point.
This proves your point, you've moron.
Ignore the overwhelming percentage of population who conform to their biological sex.
But he's admitting that sex exists and is something you can measure. And
Yes.
it's something you can put on a graph and show that 50% of the population are in one or the other. Tom, you've destroyed your own argument, you bloody idiot.
And the funny thing as well is intersex does not necessarily mean inherently a hermaphrodite. I have seen people classified as intersex who have been born biologically male, where as part of the development they seem to have developed some kind of non-functioning tiny dead uterus, and they've gone to have surgery for something else, and the doctor's gone, oh wow, you've got a tiny uterus in there, I'm just going to take that out. Doesn't affect them, never affected them, and then they go, aha, see, he was never a man to begin with. Got him.
I love the idea of the surgeon just, I'll keep that for later.
Put that on my shelf. But yeah, it's a completely ridiculous argument that doesn't really hold any ground in reason. And then if we move along...
Also, he's just admitted the biological sex is real and measurable.
Yes, as somebody felt the need to point out here, someone's response to this, I don't know who this is, Emma Hilton, if she's a commentator or anything, but she says, Tom, promise me you'll never teach statistics. The graph you have posted clearly shows two overlapping normal distributions. Each normal distribution is associated with either the female or the male sex. So he just can't help but just be handed L's, left, right and centre. No matter what he does, look at this graph, it's wrong. Look at this graph, it's wrong. But he just won't stop. He just won't stop. And if we move along, we can see some more of the responses here. Oh wait, no, there's another one where he's decided to start writing articles about this as well. Talking about blanket policies in this area are bonkers. Well, I mean, that's your perspective, Tom, but the perspective of most people looking at this are going, girls' school, biological boy, no. These things do not need to smash into one another.
Me and my ape brain can follow that amount of logic. Tom's ape brain is like, maybe.
We can find some way. And let's not also kid ourselves at the fact that there is going to be some subsection of boys who would very much likely to be going, yes, I'm a girl, just so that it can be in the same changing room as other girls for PE or something like that. Let's not kid ourselves that is a definite possibility, as once again we've seen.
We've seen in the prisons, at least.
Yes. Move along. I think this is where we get to the responses. Yeah, we are fair cop coming at him with, if we were at school together, you might have had a very distinguishable 3 or 4 inch feature that I didn't. Stop trying to shame girls into removing their much needed boundaries. It's weird. Then if we move along again, 4 Women in Scotland saying the girls who have, this is one of our points, the girls who have reported countless examples of sexual assault in schools know that genitalia matter. If you pretend it does not, you facilitate this. Another one.
I should mention, it's not just prisons, of course, because Loudoun County, as we had mentioned
previously. Yes, there you go. Okay. And then once again, if we move, Chris Rose saying, is keeping all girls schools for girls the only correct and safe decisions? Yes, yes, or yes?
I vote yes.
I vote yes also.
Moving on.
Yes, and I think there's a point to make there as well, which is that obviously you could say, well, there's not all of this incident going on in mixed schools, but I think the difference there is the fact that there is a much higher proportion of boys in those boys' schools, and men...
Wait. In mixed schools, we don't mix them in the changing rooms or the...
Oh, obviously not in the changing rooms and stuff, but you could still make the argument, because there are people who've made these arguments of, well, why are we still segregating schools in the first place? And why doesn't this happen in mixed schools then? And there's the argument of, well, greater male presence is more of a threat to other males. Therefore, it kind of regulates itself.
Well, this is just a debate between whether or not you should have the sexes segregated and whether or not that's good.
Yeah, it's a completely different argument there. But yeah, and then Dominique Samuels putting out that Tom doesn't seem to know the difference between a penis and a vagina. Unsurprising. I don't know if you've seen either. Move along again. And then he said, he responded to this with, are you implying that you would look at children's genitalia? Tom, you do not need to do trouser inspections to tell men from women. For the love of God.
Penis inspection day wasn't real for the rest of us, Tom. I don't know what to say.
Tom's the one boy who read that and was like, oh, it wasn't just me.
No, she's obviously making the point that you're an idiot. But evidenced by your own graphs, incidentally. But yeah. You didn't even get that, so I don't know why I'm even speaking to the camera. He doesn't know what the hell we're saying.
I know. And there is another dimension to look at this from, which John points out in the next link here. Yep, confused children need guidance, not indulgence. 80% of children with gender dysphoria grow out of a transgender phase, with a link to a study examining that, which is an excellent point to be made as well. If we keep just pure affirmation every single time, how many more detransitioning stories that are rather harrowing, as Carl has pointed out, are we going to be hearing, say, 10, 15 years from now?
Will people like Tom ever be held to account for that?
Yeah, will there be a reckoning?
No.
No, of course there won't. Of course there won't. And you'll just be able to go on your merry way just thinking that you were the good guy.
I was on the right side of history the whole time.
Yes, and that does seem to be the sort of line that his argumentation is going towards. And also, on that basis as well, there are predatory... I was hoping you'd have scrolled down because that page has some dodgy stuff on it. If you want to scroll down to where... No, not... oh, good. There's a part on this page...
What is in that page?
There's some very disturbing imagery that I don't think will be on YouTube, and I don't think any of us want to see. But there are some very predatory trans surgeons, well, not trans surgeons, but they are surgeons who transition people and transition kids, such as this woman called Sid Gallagher, who I believe operates out of Florida in America, who has a section on her website here saying minors and top surgery. We are happy to offer top surgery to minors with consent of parents and the recommendation of the parent's mental health professional. When we evaluate each patient, keep in mind the risk-benefit analysis and understand that it may well be much more detrimental to the patient to wait until the age of 18 for surgery. Each case is evaluated with patient and family.
What the hell is top surgery?
Top surgery is when a woman who's transitioning to be a transgender man will have their breasts removed and stitched up. You know, there was that image recently of the trans man where he had a bit of skin taken off of his thigh that was going around? Yeah, that bit where you can see all the scars going across the centre of the chest, that's a result of top surgery. So it's permanently removing the breasts and scarring people who are not 18.
Does she do the reverse as well? Does she give breast implants to boys?
Yes.
Because this is literally a South Park episode.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
So
Life is a South Park episode, but she's happy to. I mean, it's in Florida, so they're very open with what you can do there. But still, it is disgusting that this woman can transition children. Like, there are reports of 12 and 13-year-olds being transitioned by this woman. We should probably do something on her specifically, to be perfectly honest, because she does some absolutely revolting things. But, yeah, it reminds me of, in The Madness of Crowds, how Douglas Murray's talking about, that person who detransitioned, who thought they were trans for a while, and they go to the surgeons and they go to the mental health specialists who are basically just like, you're a girl, but you enjoy football. Interesting. It's all coming together. Turns out you're a boy. It's probably that level of discussion going on here. And just to end this segment off briefly, there is an article that Tom Harwood has written for the New Statesman, famous conservative publication, the New Statesman.
Was he eating crayons as you wrote it? Or?
That would explain a lot. Why the right should champion trans rights, where he talks about how he's a Brexiteering, tax-cutting, family-backing, free-trading, marketeering kind of individual. So why am I irritating much of my conservative following by taking a stand over the rights of trans people in this country? Because you're denying reality, Tom. That's the only answer. There's more that I can go into.
Like, you could find... Okay, let's clone me, and I agree with him on everything politically, except he thinks that Play-Doh is edible.
Yeah.
I'm going to call him an idiot.
I think mud is good for you. I'm going to disagree with you a bit there.
It doesn't matter that we might agree on tax reform. Like, it's the whether or not you can identify something being true, and if you can't, then I'm going to call you dumb. Because it's obviously not true.
What do you mean I can't murder children? I also like the free market. There's that level of argumentation. Tom, we have a very distinct disagreement here on the basis of reality. So, I mean, good God. But I just want to point something out, because we've gone very hard on Tom here. But it's not like he's particularly unique in mainstream Tory types, is he, really? Because we've seen so many times the Tory party members afraid to acknowledge that biological sex is a thing. When Boris Johnson was asked about it, and he just deferred to, everybody should just be treated with respect and blah. Yes, I agree. That doesn't answer the question, though. And this is where the mainstream Tory party, as far as I can tell, seems to be heading. I think he's a litmus test for where we're going in the future with the Tories, so be careful, everybody.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to thelotuseaters.com and check out all the premium content we have on the site, such as this article from John Tangney on the IQ and the regressive left, which comes with an audio cover for silver and gold tier members, in case you don't like reading. I can very much sympathize. If you'd like to find out what else is coming out on the website, you can always follow us on Getter at getter.com with lotuseaters_com being the @. Thank you and goodbye.